You know, for a company that made such a big deal out of Billy Corgan joining the creative team, you'd think we would have seen more of an effect on the show than this. I wasn't expecting any really huge changes, but I did think we might see more than we have. Aside from the Dollhouse's entrance music, it doesn't seem like there are any significant differences here at all. It's the same show pretty much, good wrestling for the most part, but creatively it's enough of a hit and miss situation that you might like it, but it's hard to really embrace it. For two women that were really blowing the roof off the place with their matches a while back, I was very surprised by how underwhelming this Gail Kim Taryn Terrell cage match was. It was way too damn short, first of all, and it wasn't nearly as good as you might think. Mostly it just seemed like a bunch of brawling. There were none of the big spots that we've come to expect from these two. It really felt like they were holding back a lot, which I didn't understand. They made a bigger deal out of the post-match stuff, but that's where it got weird. Jade and Marty interfere and cost Gail the match, then the Dollhouse are triple-teaming Gail in the cage, and this brings out Kong. Why Kong didn't just come out 5 minutes earlier to run off Jade and Marty when her intervention would have made a difference in the match, I couldn't tell you. But apparently Kong is in no real rush to get to the ring. She just walks leisurely down the ramp, looking kind of bored if I'm being honest, and gives the Dollhouse plenty of time to lock themselves in the cage, preventing Kong from getting in and saving Gail, so Kong's whole appearance here amounted to nothing, essentially.
Nothing! Absolutely nothing!
And then there was the injury angle, which to me came off really strange and awkward. Why were they making such a big deal out of this? Oh no, Taryn broke Gail's finger. A relatively minor injury that might keep Gail out of action for a week or two. The Dollhouse are monsters! I understand the story. It's the wedding ring finger, so it's symbolic. I get that. But, number one, I don't think the live audience did. If anything, they seemed confused about what was happening. And number two, it really didn't feel like that big a deal to me at all. I was like, so what? So she wears the ring on her right hand for a while. It won't kill her. There were far worse things the Dollhouse could have done to Gail in that cage, and they just didn't go for it. I do appreciate that they're at least trying to tell a story with the women that's about more than just them being catty bitches like we get with the Divas on Raw, but I think the nuances were lost on most people here, including me. The match didn't deliver like I thought it would. The post-match angle missed the mark in my opinion. Really disappointing segment from the Knockouts here. I was expecting much better from this. The Knockouts also did something I didn't expect a damn thing from, and got exactly that. We had another installment in the never-ending bore fest of Angelina Love and Velvet Sky, and I could not give a shit about this if you paid me. Velvet showed up in the crowd again, so Angelina spends a few minutes yelling at her. Velvet attacks again, security was there, so nothing really happens. I guess they're going to drag this out for a while because apparently the shitty match these two are going to have eventually is something that we have to build up to. It's such a chore getting through this stuff. I was just counting the seconds until this was finished. It's so frustrating to watch TNA continue to waste time with this again. Freaking NXT gets a buzz going with the great match their developmental girls Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks had, and here's TNA, the company that boasts about how great their women's division is, still trying to get blood from a stone with Angelina Love and Velvet Sky, who are both years past their shelf life at this point. What the hell is it going to take for you to finally cut the cord on these two?
Urge to kill rising.
And I guess the Knockouts are covering both ends of the spectrum this week because probably the best segment of the night from a storyline perspective was the one with Mickie James. And I'm not just saying that because of that black dress she was wearing, although that certainly didn't hurt. God damn. I really like what they've done with this angle so far. Mickie is stuck in the middle of this feud between James Storm and Magnus, her friend and her family. Storm is continuing to get his hooks into her for reasons still unknown, and so far Magnus has been too hot-headed to stop him from doing it. And Storm takes a step further here, appealing to Mickey's vanity, and the next thing you know, she's going to meet him in Nashville to talk about her career, playing right into his hand. And it's actually pretty compelling stuff. Mickie still doesn't see what Storm is doing, and it makes sense that she wouldn't see it because that's the kind of charisma that James Storm has. And I don't know where this is going exactly, but Storm has been pulling this off brilliantly so far, and Mickie and Magnus are playing their parts very well too. All told, this might be the best storyline on the show right now. I don't know about you guys, but I was completely uninterested in this X Division match. The division doesn't get a single segment on the show for weeks, then they just throw 7 guys into a completely random gauntlet title match and expect us to care? It doesn't work like that, and TNA should know this by now. And it doesn't help that the match isn't even that good by X Division standards. There's no story being told here, it's just a big schmoz, and kind of a forgettable one. Plus, we've been given no reason whatsoever to care about most of these people. There's Mandrews, who is good, but they haven't done anything to establish him yet. Manic, who's been doing nothing. Tigre Uno, whose role was so insignificant I wondered why they even bothered with him. Zima Ion, who's become a jobber unfortunately thanks to his association with the Bromance. There was some guy from AAA that I've never even heard of who just shows up from out of nowhere. Also, Crazy Steve was there, but for the life of me, I could not remember a single thing about him.
He's crazy!
Except that. The only people who had any business whatsoever being in this match were Kenny King and Rockstar Spud. So why this wasn't simply a one-on-one rematch for the title, I have no clue. But even with those guys, the whole thing shits the bed. You have Spud win the X Division title and do virtually nothing with it, then he loses it to Kenny King, who does less than nothing with it. Meanwhile, Spud vows to get the title back, only to disappear from TV for weeks until this show. They gave us no reason to give a shit about Spud losing the title, and no reason to give a shit about him winning it back. So my question is, if you weren't going to do anything at all with Spud in his efforts to chase the title and get it back, if you weren't going to tell some kind of a story to try to make us care about it, then why even have Spud lose the damn belt to Kenny in the first place? Absolutely nothing was made of this. The whole thing couldn't have felt more pointless. You think I'm going to give this half-assed segment a thumbs up just because the X Division finally got a match on TV? We're way past that. I just see it as something they're doing to placate people instead of putting the real work into the division that it needs. Give the X Division characters and a reason to care about them, then we'll talk. Give it a storyline that has regular screen time week to week and some actual attention put into it. Because that's not what this was. Frankly, this just felt phoned in.
I will not participate in this charade this evening.
On the wrestling side of things, it doesn't get any better this week than Wolves vs. Dirty Heels match number 2. This kicked 7 kinds of ass, and if you missed it, you should be kicking yourself. It was that good. I do wonder what they can do with the tag team division once this series is over, but in the meantime, this is a hell of a diversion.
Yes!
Okay, 2 things about this EC3 Anderson match. First, when Anderson beat Tyrus previously, he won the right to choose a stipulation for this match with EC3, wherein Tyrus has to be locked in a cage so he can't interfere, right? But apparently that was bullshit, because Tyrus could just choose not to enter the cage and the match just starts regardless? He should have been required to be locked in there before the match even started, but for some reason he can just decide that he doesn't want to and nobody makes a thing out of it? What kind of sense does that make? You're sure Anderson gets him in the cage eventually, but why even do the stipulation if you're not going to enforce it?
This is unbelievable. This doesn't make any sense.
Wait a minute. Was the cage even part of the stipulation in the first place? Or was it just that Anderson gets EC3 in a match? Was the cage something that they added later and it just got tacked on? Al Snow said on commentary that the cage was part of the stipulation, but I don't know. The whole thing was kind of unclear now that I think about it. And second, the match was too short. But that aside, the writers did the right thing here and put EC3 over Anderson pretty much cleanly, showing that Tyrus was a non-factor in the end anyway. That was great. That made me very happy. This was something the EC3 character needed to do, show that he can win matches on his own. He got a lot of credibility from this, and with this latest victory under his belt, I don't see any reason why EC3 shouldn't be Kurt Angle's next challenger for the title at this point. I don't see how you can delay that anymore, and unless they're saving it for a big show like a Slammiversary or a Bound for Glory, they probably shouldn't.
Shut up and follow me.
The main event was Kurt Angle hopefully wrapping up this feud with Eric Young in an I Quit match for the title. I didn't have any strong feelings about it. It was a pretty good match, I guess, but they've probably had better ones. It didn't feel climactic like a feud ender should in my opinion, but that might just be because I wasn't digging the feud to begin with. For me, it was never going to feel that climactic because I didn't buy Eric in this spot in the first place. But they worked hard and they didn't have a bad match or anything. As a transitional feud for Angle, it could have been worse, I suppose. But I think it's time to give him a real challenger instead of someone who's just there to tide him over. Just saying. So that was Impact for this week. It's still the same story for the most part. Wrestling-wise, it's pretty solid, but creatively, they need to sort some shit out because the flaws in the writing are still holding the show back in a lot of ways. But that's not all there is to talk about, as you know. There are a lot of rumors going around right now about what's happening with TNA. Are they getting canceled? Are they not getting canceled? Is the network replacing them with ROH? And I haven't really chimed in on it, mostly because I've learned by now that knee-jerk reactions to unconfirmed reports from sources that, quite frankly, I have little reason to trust are not going to lead to anything productive. And I just don't feel like obsessing over it when I'd much rather occupy myself with other things. Is it possible that Impact is getting canceled in favor of ROH? I suppose. It's also possible that Destination America just wants a big wrestling programming block. We really don't know. I heard that Discovery was adding Impact to their Spanish language affiliate or something like that. That doesn't seem like the action of a network that's getting ready to cancel a show. I'm skeptical about this personally. I'll talk about it if and when it happens, but until we actually get confirmation on it one way or another, I'm going to choose not to stress myself out over this. There are more concrete things that I'd rather focus on. For example, 2 weeks ago, having not received my royalty check for the TKO idea, I said that the following week there would be no Impact review. Fourth Dimension Fool Killer put the kibosh on that plan. However, as it turns out, there was no new episode of Impact that week, so I didn't have to do a review anyway. Just a technicality, sure, but nevertheless, I said that I would not do an Impact review last week, and despite what Fourth Dimension Fool Killer said, that's exactly what happened. So in a way, I finally got one over on that despicable son of a bitch.
No, you didn't.
I know.